My younger dog Lotchen tore my raincoat into pieces, but as always, there's a brighter side to it. The fabric is perfect to represent canvas tops. I used it for the Opel Admiral's open top soft cover. I like it much better than the styrene that didn't have the slightest bit of texture. Here you can see what the actual cover looks like. The kid's soft top doesn't come with that cover, but that doesn't matter because its shape isn't correct either. It had to be changed a bit to give it a more realistic appearance. And now I'll show you how I did it, and I'll show you a couple of mistakes I made. These are the three parts that make the open top soft. According to the pics of the actual car, these parts had to be added. I used 2x2mm styrene rod to do that. Then I continued with the fabric roughly cut to shape. I used contact glue, but this was too much. It made for some odd-looking shapes beneath the fabric. A very thin layer of that glue is enough, and this was my first mistake. Here you can see that I had put on the fabric but ripped it off again. That's what remains of the contact glue, and it's impossible to remove it. Mistake number 2. In order to correct the top shape, I added these parts. It was a bit time-consuming to give them the right shape. I didn't like the gap on the top edge at all, and so I cut out a piece of 0.4mm styrene to close it. It was my third mistake because the tube would have looked much better. Since the shape still wasn't correct, I added these vertical rods. Some sanding was necessary because they were a bit too long. Then I closed the openings on both sides with pieces of 0.4mm styrene sheet. Ready to apply more fabric. Up to now everything looked okay. I should have filled these gaps too, because it was difficult to cover them completely. Mistake number 4 and still counting. I had built the top according to the vague instructions, but I didn't do it on the car. Maybe I would have realized that this part was in the wrong position. My 5th mistake. I had to remove it, and that meant I had to remove the fabric too. I had to glue on a small piece of fabric to cover the styrene. Here you see the soft top with the black base paint on. Too many mistakes. That was rubbish. I really hated the result. These small locators had to be filled first. Then I used the original soft top to outline the base's shape on a piece of cardboard. After that, I did the same on a 0.5mm styrene sheet using the cardboard template. I sanded the outer edges into a slight angle. Again, I used the kid's soft top to outline the rear part on cardboard. Here you see the first major components for the new top. The base plate, the rear part, a locator for the rear part, and 4 braces for the rear that I didn't use. For the top edge I used the tube of a Q-tip and a piece of 1mm copper wire that I inserted to give it the proper shape. As you'll see later, I made my work unnecessarily complicated by the use of that tube. I forgot that I had better material at hand. The locator glued into place and the front edge is cut and sanded into the correct shape. That looked good, but I had to use some styrene on the underside of the base plate to fill the corners. Then I carefully bent the rear part into its rounded shape. I glued it into place and I was really happy with it. Next was gluing the top edge to the rear part. CA glue didn't work and so I used contact glue. CA glue was still useful to fill the gap between the rear part and the top edge. After that, I cut out the side panels and bent them roughly into shape. I used cloth pegs to hold them in place. Then I used 3 pieces of 2 by 2 mm styrene rod and a piece of 0.5 mm styrene sheet to add some height to the base plate. I used pieces of the rod for the sides. Up to now they weren't wide enough. And here's the material I should or could have used for the top edge. I've got some 2.4 mm styrene tubes that are much easier to work with. Again, I used a piece of 1 mm copper wire to shape the tube. It was used for the lower inner edge of the rear part. I used the cardboard template I had to make the inner rear part. Then I made a second part for the base plate. Together with a small locator I glued to the rear part, it made an angled panel that was needed to get as close as possible to the actual soft top. Then I used pieces of styrene rod for the side panel's upper edges. Some carving and sanding was necessary. And then it was time to glue the fabric onto the rear of the soft top. I wasn't really happy with these wrinkles and I could have avoided them if I had started on the inner side. On the other hand, I liked the result on the outside. After that, I covered the inner panel. The excess fabric was needed because I wanted to glue it to the underside of the base plate. And here's what it looked like. Looked because I changed it a little later. I didn't like the gap between this part and the rear. Dry fitting revealed that the side panels had to be sanded into a steeper angle. The rear fits perfectly. I taped a toothpick to the knife's handle to keep it from rolling off the bench.
Denn das Leben, Annabelle, ist nur mit dir erträglich. Kleider, Hüte, Pelze und Juwelen will ich schenken. Immer nett und zärtlich sein und niemals dich mehr kränken. Jeden Tag.
A comparison between the new and the old soft top.
Wo ich träumen kann, heute endlich kommst du an.
Since I didn't like the result of my first attempt to cover base and rear with fabric, I made one single piece to cover the whole structure. I glued these short pieces of wire onto a particular area of the side edges to keep them straight while gluing the large piece of fabric into place. Before I did this, I had to cover the side panels. Here's more dry fitting. This time I was really happy.
Schau ins Zimmer zu ihr, bringe Grüße von mir. Annabelle, ach bitte komm doch schnell, so schreit.
I primed the soft top and painted it black. The lower front edge won't be visible, so there's no need to do anything about these fibers. Compared to the, well, upgraded kid's top, the new one looks better in my opinion. The only thing I'm not completely happy with is the rear top corner, but I think I can live with it. If I should find out that I can't, there are still 3 months to go. There's enough time left to build another version. Masking the windshield was simple. Mask everything but the centerpiece. I want all side windows to be lowered, so I had to cut off the small triangular windows. The clear parts are quite thin, and so the plan was to score deep enough along the frame and then carefully snap off the larger piece. While I was happy about the way it worked with one window, I messed up the second one. The vertical part of the frame had to be rebuilt. I used a narrow strip of 0.4mm styrene sheet. I glued it into place with the Mia Extra Thin. That worked very well, but if you want to do that, it is very important to put the glue only onto the styrene. If you put it onto the clear part, you damage the surrounding area. Then the styrene strip was cut and sanded into shape. After that I masked the windows.
Weil ich dich liebe, glaub ich an dich, doch willst das Schicksal, vergisst du mich, das darf nicht sein, tausendmal nein.
When you look at the pic of the actual car, you can see that the upper edge of the door has a rather wide slot. The side window disappears in this slot and only the top edge is visible. I had to remove some styrene from the top edge of the front doors to give them the correct appearance. Then I inserted matching pieces of 0.4mm styrene sheet and glued the smaller windows into place.
Mein Geschick ist der Weg auch weit, führt dich und auch mich in die Seligkeit. Darum bitt ich dich heut, komm zurück.
Of course I did the same with the rear doors.
Es gibt nichts Schöneres als Glück zu zweien und die Gewissheit, geliebt zu sein. Schon der Gedanke, wenn du mich küsst, dass du wie ich glücklich bist.
Here you see it, between the fire extinguisher and the spare wheel. All necessary parts were a narrow strip of 0.4mm styrene and some stretched through. I used Mia Extra Thin to soften the styrene's top area. Then it was easy to bend it without damaging it. A small piece of sprue was used to represent the clamp's hinge. I put the spare wheel into its bay to locate the clamp. CA glue was used to glue it into place. While you're watching this video, the clamp is already primed and painted black. More in my next update. That's it for now.